Wow. Good Tuesday afternoon. Is it Tuesday? It's Wednesday. It's Wednesday. The week goes too fast, you guys. Thank you for joining us. I'm Ben Dorr, Political Director for Minnesota Gun Rights, coming at you live, loud, and very proud of the Second Amendment from our headquarters here in Northfield, Minnesota. We're located at 1064 Highway 3 South in Northfield. Stop in anytime. Gun owners stop in here constantly. I love it. Kind of keeps my head on straight because I'm kind of surrounded by a bunch of, this isn't a very gun-friendly town. Anyway, you guys, it's hot and heavy time for gun rights here in Minnesota right now. We're only a few weeks away now from the primary. The Republican primary is coming up August 14th. And guys, this is when we get to do the damage. I know it seems like it's all what happens during session is the most important, but right now is when we get our pound of flesh. And so it's very important that gun owners know what the heck is going on with their gun rights here in Minnesota. Those of you who tuned in last Saturday, you can see that we have Queen Kurt Doubt. We still have his grand prize is sitting here behind us. Doubt, if you're watching this, please stop in, pick up your prize. Crown fit for a queen, because that's what he thinks he is over gun owners. I like my Freedom Cup. I like that. Guys, I got a couple things I want to talk to you about right away tonight. I guess it's not quite tonight, but it's overcast, so it seems dark. A lot of you know who Representative Nick Zerwas is. Now, Zerwas, he's one of those guys who has spent the majority of his career trying to convince gun owners that he's something that he's really not. Big shocker, right? I know this is Minnesota. We have a lot of so-called pro-gun Republicans who are trying to pawn themselves off as Second Amendment supporters, but we know that's not true. We want to talk to you right now about Representative Nick Zerwas. He's got a long history of gun control, and we've been getting this question a lot. Got it several times today. People, what is the deal with Nick Zerwas? He always seems to be on the warpath against gun owners, against Second Amendment supporters. He's supposed to be a conservative voice. At least that's how he tries to sell himself. And again, just yesterday, he was all over Facebook attacking grassroots folks, activists, Second Amendment guys. And so people are going, what's the deal? Like, what's the real story about Nick Zerwas? Now, if you called Nick, he'd give you a great story, I'm sure. If you called any of his friends in the legislature, they would all tell you what a fantastic guy he is. But we know, guys, and you guys have seen videos on Nick before, Zerwas has a few things. He's got a long history now of being very unfaithful. Very unfaithful. We do not like people who are unfaithful, but he's unfaithful to gun owners in Minnesota. Last year, he was caught with his hand in the cookie jar drafting legislation to force certain groups of citizens to become registered with the state if they wanted to carry firearms with their businesses. We had some very concerned folks came forward and said, look, he's trying to shut our businesses down. These are lawful businesses. And Zerwas is on the warpath doing a favor for a buddy of his. Well, we called him out on it. He got very upset with us, but he dropped the proposal. He did not introduce it during the 2018 legislative session. And for us, that was a win. Guys, let me know where you're watching from, all across the state or across the country, wherever the heck you are. Audrey says, you mean people who lie, right? Now, pretty much. Kirsty enjoys that Kurt's crown is still here. Let me know where you're watching from, you guys. Thank you for joining me tonight. So yeah, we expose Nick Zerwas, because we don't believe in gun control. We believe all gun control is an infringement on our God-given, constitutionally guaranteed right to keep and bear arms. And so he attacked our organization wholesale. He went hog wild online, was shouting about MGR. And he's been doing that a lot ever since. He was very, I guess, butthurt, for lack of a better term. I'm sorry if that's offensive, that we called him out on his attacks, and he's been holding that on his shoulders ever since, that chip on his shoulder. Well, you guys saw what happened with Kurt Doubt over the last couple of weeks. The guy is off his meds, drinking too much or something. He's been attacking us hog wild, trying to cover up the fact that he kills Stand Your Ground and that he is telling candidates not to fill out the Minnesota gun rights candidate questionnaire. Guys, we have Audrey in Little Falls, Joel in Belgrade, Patrick in Cottage Grove. Let's see here. Oh, my goodness, we got a lot of people. Craig is currently in Bloomington. Terry in Maple Grove. We got Cater in Albertville. And Sauk Rapids. We got Levi in Sauk Rapids. Like that place. So that's Nick Zerwas so far. Now, when Kurt Doubt attacks us hardcore, Zerwas is the first representative who claims to be pro-gun, claims to support the Second Amendment, claims to be fighting for the rights of gun owners in St. Paul. He's the first person to jump on Doubt's bandwagon and start attacking gun owners, saying, you guys are frauds, you guys are fakes, this organization doesn't do anything, your phone calls, your emails, your petitions are all for nothing because we're not helping. Oh, maybe we're just not helping advance their personal political careers. You know, we're okay with that. We're okay with that. So here we are. Bring it up to current here. Nick Zerwas refuses to fill out his Minnesota gun rights candidate questionnaire. He's doing exactly as Doubt has commanded, and he is not going to fill out his survey and let gun owners know where he stands. Well, I guess if you intend to push for gun control, or if you intend to be a milquetoast loser when it comes to gun rights, of course you wouldn't want to be on record with the Second Amendment, because we might call you out again for not doing your job. Ben Wallace says, is he up for re-election? You bet. He's a state rep. Every state rep for the Minnesota House is up for re-election in November. I do not believe he has a primary opponent, but he is up for re-election this fall. And so he attacks gun owners. He attacks our organization. He sides with the speaker over the Second Amendment. And here we have it. Now he's supporting Tim Pawlenty. Now, guys, you know, Tim Pawlenty's record on a lot of stuff really speaks for itself. Here's what I know. Minnesota Gun Rights surveyed all the gubernatorial candidates, and Jeff Johnson filled out his survey 100% pro-gun. He was very excited, very eager to do that. He filled out his survey 100% pro-gun, and then he took it a step farther. Jeff Johnson filled out his leadership pledge, and that almost never happens, but he filled out his leadership pledge, promising to go to war on behalf of gun owners should he win the governor's office. And if he does not do his job, if he becomes governor, we have a survey we can hold him accountable with. On the other hand, Tim Pawlenty abjectly refuses to fill out his survey, won't do it. We can't find a phone number. We can't find an address anywhere to get a hold of the Pawlenty campaign. We've sent the messages on Facebook. They will not fill out the Minnesota Gun Rights candidate questionnaire. Instead, they're doing what Kurt Doubt has been doing. Remember, you guys say, Kurt, why won't you put Stand Your Ground on the floor for a vote? And he goes, oh, we already passed Stand Your Ground and Dayton vetoed it. Well, he's talking about a 6-year-old bill. He's talking about a long dead bill under different majorities, under different leadership, and he's trying to pawn it off as, I'm fighting for the Second Amendment. We passed it, and Minnesota Gun Rights, well, they're liars. They're not telling the truth. No, different people passed it 6 years ago, and that's totally an unacceptable answer. And so we saw on old T-Paw's Facebook page last night, a gun owner came on there and said, Tim Pawlenty, what are you willing to do to fight on behalf of gun owners if you win the election? If you become governor of Minnesota, what are you willing to do? And just like Kurt Doubt, just like a typical politician, the Tim Pawlenty campaign responds and says, Tim Pawlenty signed some pro-gun bill into law 15 years ago, back in 2003, and that's what he did 15 years ago. That's not an answer. The question for all of you politicians, When you're asked a question, you expect an answer to the question, okay? We didn't ask, what have you done? We said, what are you going to do on behalf of gun owners, Tim Pawlenty, if you become governor? And the answer is, I did something back in the day. That's not a good enough answer. The climate for gun control is white hot, like we have not seen in decades and decades. And so for people like T-Paw to rest on their laurels and say, well, you know, I did something 15 years ago, that's just totally unacceptable. But Representative Zerwas is totally ignoring the endorsement process, right? The Republican Party says, we want Jeff Johnson, right? They endorse Jeff Johnson for governor, and instead of people like Zerwas getting on board like he's supposed to do, like it's expected, especially for a pro-gun candidate like Jeff Johnson, for them to just turn their backs and go, nah, that's totally unacceptable. And I'll tell you why, because every single election season, we hear the same song and dance from our so-called leaders. They say, you know, if they get one of their guys, if one of their guys wins the endorsement, if one of their guys is up to bat, then they say you cannot endorse or support a candidate who is not endorsed by the Republican Party. How dare you stand against the grassroots by supporting a candidate who is not endorsed? And they try to shame gun owners. They try to shame grassroots activists into going, well, yeah, I mean, I guess we're supposed to support the endorsed candidate. But if it's a real pro-gun candidate, if it's not one of their inside players, well, then they totally ignore the endorsing process, and now they're all they're all chips in on, you know, Tom, Dick, and Harry over here, and they're going to support this guy regardless of the will of local activists and the local party who chose it. I think of right now in District 55A, Eric Mortensen, promising to do battle on behalf of gun owners, 100% pro-gun, as solid a candidate as I've ever seen in my life. He won the endorsement. Now, and again, we're not a partisan group. You know, we're neither Republican nor Democrat here. We care about the issue. But this still stands here, folks, in that he won the endorsement. But Kurt Doubt's man, Bob Lunan, he didn't win the endorsement, but now Kurt Doubt and his friends are all in trying to get Bob Lunan back into St. Paul because, well, Bob's going to do what he's told to do. And so bringing it full circle here to have people like Zerwas supporting the candidate who did not win the endorsement, all the while telling us to do just the opposite, is totally unconscionable. But that is part and parcel for Nick Zerwas. We've seen it before. We are seeing it right now. And so again, he would sit here and say, I'm pro-gun. I'm so pro-gun. I'm the biggest pro-gunner you've ever seen in your life. But then you go on his Facebook page, and who is he supporting worse than Tim Pawlenty? Who is he supporting on his personal Facebook page, but none other than Rich Stanek? Many of you guys know him. He is the sheriff of Hennepin County. Hennepin County Sheriff. If you guys don't know who Rich Stanek is the guy who hopped on an airplane in 2013, flew out to Washington, D.C., and sat side by side with Barack Obama and helped them craft the Manchin-Toomey assault weapons ban legislation back in 2013. Hopped on an airplane, sat side by side, literally. I should have printed the picture off. The picture is on our Facebook page. He sat side by side with none other than Barack Obama himself and helped craft some of the worst gun control legislation that we have seen in Congress in decades. Rich Stanek is a frothing, foaming at the mouth gun control leftist. And he's got the support of Nick Zerwas. Zerwas is sharing his stuff on his Facebook page, pro Rich Stanek, and the dude is the biggest gun control goon you will ever come across. That is who Nick Zerwas is. These guys are political animals. Animals. They will go whichever way the wind blows. They will defend anti-gunners if it helps them or if they're personal friends. And now Zerwas is supporting Rich Stanek, one of the authors of the Manchin-Toomey gun control bill. He's been instrumental in helping draft gun control legislation for years in D.C. And that is who Nick Zerwas wants to pretend is pro-gun. And Nick Zerwas himself, he wants to pretend he's pro-gun. Do you think he's pro-gun? I don't think he's pro-gun. The list of things he has done just speaks for itself. He doesn't fight for the Second Amendment. He doesn't fight for gun owners. He attacks Minnesota gun rights. He supports radical anti-gun leftists like Rich Stanek. He spits in the face of the endorsement process and supports T-Paw, who refuses to fill out his Minnesota gun rights candidate questionnaire. There's not much else to be said there. Zerwas, you really have to answer for your compromise and for your personal bias against gun owners. You live in a pro-gun district. You pretend to be pro-gun, yet you attack gun owners at every turn. That is Nick Zerwas. But then again, guys, Nick Zerwas is simply just a microcosm of the major problem here in Minnesota, and that is so-called pro-gunners pretending to be pro-gun, but really in it for themselves. They have a political agenda, but it's not for you, it's for themselves. And so the list goes on and on of people just like Nick Zerwas. They talk a good game, but in the end, they stab gun owners in the back. And that, guys, brings me to my conclusion here, and that is, this is why it is so essential that we get every candidate on record filling out their Minnesota gun rights candidate questionnaire so we know where they stand, and if they decide to stab gun owners in the back, well, then we can go into their districts, expose them, put the heat on them for their attacks on gun owners. So, guys, I'm asking you right now, if you haven't already, please click on the link in the comments section, print off your Minnesota gun rights candidate questionnaire, and give it to your candidates. They're going through parades. They're at community forums. They're all over the place, dressed up in their so-called farmer's garb, whatever it does to make them look like they're human beings that fit in with the average Joe. They're walking through all these parades, shaking hands. Make sure they have filled out the MGR candidate survey. I'll tell you right away, before this time tomorrow, everybody who has filled out the survey, their responses will be on this link. If you click on this link, there's the survey, but if you scroll down, there's a list of everybody in the house that we did survey. And so every answer that we have so far will be on that link tomorrow by this time. So come back and check, and you will be able to see who the heck filled it out. Hey, look who hopped on here. Eric Mortensen. Guys, I just talked about him. We just talked about that race. He's the establishment, Doubt, and his goons in St. Paul are doing everything possible to get boozing Bob Lunan into office, right? They're ignoring the endorsement process. They want Bob because they love Bob. And they love Bob because Bob presses whatever button he's told to do by leadership. If leadership says no, stand your ground, Bob Lunan is the last man on earth who would stand up and push for stand your ground law. If Doubt says no constitutional carry, Bob Lunan's lips are sealed. So that is why they're ignoring the endorsement process. Eric Mortensen, on the other hand, here in the comments section, filled out his survey. He was the first candidate to fill out his Minnesota gun rights candidate questionnaire. He filled it out 100%, promising to not just talk, not just say, oh, I support stand your ground, like people like Doubt have been saying all this time. He's promised to not just co-sponsor. That's always a soft answer, right? You send in the survey, will you, sponsor, co-sponsor, or no, stand your ground law. Most people go, oh, I'll co-sponsor it because that's the minimum they can do, and maybe that'll appease the gun guys, and that doesn't really require that we do anything. It's very rare that people actually fill out sponsor. Eric Mortensen has promised to sponsor Stand Your Ground. He's promised to sponsor constitutional carry law and not just introduce them and let the bill die. We've seen that many times. You had Jim Nash, who's business partners with the Minnesota Gunners Caucus. He introduced his Stand Your Ground for the intentional purpose of letting the bill die. But at least then he can go back to his district and say, I sponsored Stand Your Ground. Guys, this is the game that's played in St. Paul. People introduce bills so they can claim credit with absolutely no intention of fighting for it. On the other hand, candidate Mortensen here is promising to fight on behalf of gun owners, to go to war on behalf of gunners, to not just sponsor the bills, not just co-sponsor, not just sponsor, but force votes. Force votes. Put the bill on the House floor. Do what Kurt Doubt refuses to do. This is what candidate Mortensen has promised to do when he filled out his gun rights survey 100% and filled out his leadership pledge. And again, Kurt Doubt and his cronies are going to war, doing whatever they can do to keep candidate Mortensen from winning his election and to make sure that their friend Boozer Bob goes back to St. Paul to do what they're told. This is happening all across the state. This happens election season after election season where gun owners get stabbed in the back by people like Kurt Doubt and Nick Zerwas, who are looking out for themselves. They're looking out for their own interests. They're looking out for their own political agenda. And gun owners pay the price. So guys, make sure your candidates filled out the stinking Minnesota gun rights candidate questionnaire. Don't accept another answer. Don't accept another answer. If they say, well, I filled out the NRA survey. Look, the NRA has given a perfect score to Kurt Doubt, who slaughters pro-gun bills every time he gets an opportunity. They endorsed radical anti-gunners in 2016, like Senator Rod Skoy, like Senators Lyle Coonan. They endorsed radical anti-gunners, and we just don't think that that is okay. So when your candidate says, I filled out the NRA survey, say, that's good, but did you fill out the Minnesota Gun Rights survey? Well, they'll say, well, we filled out the Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus survey. They're the real gun rights group. Yeah, why? Because Kurt Doubt says so? We know they're in business with legislators. We know that they're pocketing massive amounts of their PAC money. We know that they endorsed those same radical anti-gun leftists in 2016, which gun owners booted out when we educated them on where these candidates stood. Now we have people like Paul Utke in the Senate who sponsored constitutional carry for us. It's unacceptable. It's unacceptable. So tell them, no, you want the Minnesota gun rights candidate questionnaire filled out because, hey, you know what? Those guys are going to hold you accountable. Those guys are going to expose you if you attack the Second Amendment. And hey, we'll come alongside anybody in St. Paul who's willing to fight for the Second Amendment, and we will do everything we can to ward off the anti-gunners, and we will go to war for any legislator who is willing to go to war for gun owners. That's our promise. If you fight for gun owners, we fight for you. That's how this works. The problem is nobody's doing it right now. And so we got to make sure that we get the candidates on record, fill them out. Erica says, I just sent the survey to the 15B candidates. Fantastic, Erica. Fantastic. We'll let you know if anybody has filled that out. Again, I'm going to put the results we do have on that link before this time tomorrow. That stuff is going to be on there. So make sure to check back and see who has filled it out. And I'll tell you, it's a paltry list. It's very small. You know why? Because Speaker Doubt is telling everybody, don't fill out the survey. Don't fill out the survey. We have it on good authority. He is sending this email out to every candidate. He compiles a list of email addresses and he sends emails and phone calls to all these candidates saying, don't fill out the MGR survey because we don't want them to be able to hold us accountable for our actions. And so many of these candidates, oh, they want to please the speaker. They want the speaker to love them. Queened out. That's what he is. He's queened out. And there's his crown waiting for him to come pick it up. We are not in the business of pleasing speakers. We are not in the business of pleasing politicians. We are in the business of exposing anti-gunners, pushing for stand your ground law, stopping gun control, and we're unapologetic about it. Greg Meyer says we should put a list out by for all worth voting for and who should be replaced. I have people ask me all the time, who's who? Like to just hand them a list. Greg, I'll just tell you flat out, it's hard to believe. It's hard to believe. But I'm telling you, there is not a single solitary soul in St. Paul who's willing to go the extra mile, who's willing to step up to the bat for gun owners. Nobody will do it. They will not. Oh, you might find somebody to introduce a stand your ground bill. I mean, do you know that individual reps can stand up on the House floor and force a vote on their bill? They can take a stand your ground bill and say, I want to amend this onto this bill, and I ask for a record roll call vote. Individual representatives could get us a vote on stand your ground law if they wanted to, if they had the courage to, if they had the spine. And so it's been 6 years since we have had any vote on stand your ground law, and we cannot find a single solitary sitting representative who is willing to stand up and get us the vote on stand your ground. I mean, do you know what would happen if stand your ground made it onto the House floor? It would pass. It would pass out of the House. It would pass over to the Senate. We have a 20+ pro-gun majority in the House. And so all it takes is one representative who's willing to stand up there, ignore Speaker Doubt, ignore the wishes of their own caucus, and actually fight for gun owners. And so you ask, let's get a list of people on who's who, who's pro-gun, who's not, who's fighting for gun owners. And I'm telling you, there ain't a single soul in St. Paul who is fighting for gun owners. Not one. So go online, print off a list of sitting representatives and senators, and you got your list. You got your list. That's a list of people who aren't fighting for gun owners because nobody is willing to force the vote. Nobody is willing to do it. And so when we stand up and say, look, this is unacceptable. We need stand your ground in Minnesota. Gun owners deserve it. We have a Republican House, a Republican Senate. These are supposed to be pro-gun majorities. We need a vote. We need a vote. And when we call them out on it and say, why don't we have a vote? They attack us. They attack us wholesale. It's madness. Total madness. And so, guys, we're hopeful. We're very hopeful. We're excited about people like Eric Mortensen, who has filled out his survey 100%. But more than that, we've spoken with him, and he, he's a self-made man. He's a man who does not require the love and affection of the speaker in order to do his job for gun owners. He's not a guy who requires all the attaboys and the pats on the back. That's what all these other weak-kneed reps want. They all want to be loved. They all want to be buddies and friends with everybody in St. Paul. And that's why they're not willing to do anything. Whereas people like Eric Mortensen have promised to go there and fight on behalf of gun owners. Whereas Bob Lunan, the guy who's running against him, Boozer Bob hasn't done a thing for gun owners ever. Nothing. Not a thing. So guys, we are excited about this upcoming election season because we only need one person. We only need one person to stand up for gun owners and fight for the Second Amendment. And we'll see what happens this election season, you guys. But make sure your candidates are filling it out. Audrey says, what the heck is the matter with those people in the cities? Does no one care? It's not just the cities, Audrey. All these reps, I guess you can't see it. I'm pointing at my district maps over here. All these reps who live in these rural, pro-gun, fantastic districts, these reps come to St. Paul, they sit down, they do nothing. And then they go back home and say, I'm pro-gun, I fought for you, I fought for the Second Amendment, now wasn't the time for stand your ground law, yada, 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 the list goes on, and they make up excuses. Excuse after excuse after excuse. Or you get people who do introduce pro-gun bills, worthless bills, weak bills, and then they go around, they go, hey, buddy, sign on. Everybody's a co-sponsor. Everybody's a co-sponsor of this pro-gun bill. Get a whole list, right? And then we're supposed to go, yeah, rock on. Got a lot of co-sponsors on this bill. And then let the bill die. Don't bring it out for a vote. Don't take it out of committee. Don't do it. And so they let the bill die in committee. They don't give us a vote on the bill. But you know what? Every one of those reps, they can go back home to their districts and say, I am a co-sponsor of this pro-gun bill or that pro-gun bill. And with never any intention of actually passing the bill. So guys, that's why, hey, here at Minnesota Gun Rights, we try to tell it like it is. The other organizations, they love playing this patty cake, protect them game. We're in it to win it. We're in it for stand your ground. We're in it for constitutional carry. And we're not willing to give free passes to anti-gun wolves in sheep's clothing like Nick Zerwas, like we were talking about just earlier in the video here. We're not willing to do it. We got to get these people on record so if they don't do their jobs, we can hold them accountable. Audrey says, so how do we find out who goes against or for in our area? Audrey, that's exactly what this survey is all about. Who's actually pro-gun? Well, who's willing to put their name on paper? Who's willing to actually sign it and send it back to us? That's a pretty good indicator of what they're going to do with their time in St. Paul. And so that is why we're trying to get these surveys filled out. And that is why Speaker Doubt is making sure that as many candidates as possible don't fill out the survey. So again, what results we do have will be on this link right here in the comment section, right on top. We're going to put this on our website. If you scroll down past the survey, you can see everybody that we did survey running for the House. And so we will have everybody who has filled it out, that information will be on there. So Audrey, if you know where you live, if you know what district you live in, you can hop on there, scroll down, and see if there are any results. If there are no results, then that person has decided to side with Kurt Doubt and not fill out the Minnesota Gun Rights Candidate Questionnaire. To us, that's a pretty good indicator that they intend to be another milquetoast, weak Doubt supporter when they make it to St. Paul. And that, guys, that is how gun rights dies in states like Minnesota. This is how we get a shiv in the ribs by people like Kurt Doubt because they don't want to be held accountable for their actions. Unbelievable, unacceptable. It's believable. It's Minnesota after all, but it's totally unacceptable. We have a pro-gun House and a pro-gun Senate, and gun owners deserve votes on these bills. They deserve a speaker who actually does his job for gun owners. Why is that so hard? In Iowa, they passed Stand Your Ground law last year. In Missouri, the year before, they passed Stand Your Ground and constitutional carry, sign into law. Just this calendar year, Wyoming passed Stand Your Ground law. But here in Minnesota, Speaker Doubt kills it, and he makes sure that all of his lemmings are more than happy to follow suit. But we're going to continue to draw attention to this, continue to expose these people and all parties involved who are attacking the Second Amendment while pretending to be pro-gun. Greg Meyer says, as far as I'm concerned, I'll stand my ground no matter what. Of course you will, Greg. Of course you will. So will I. I got a wife. I got 2 kids. I'm not going to run away. My family's safety depends on it. You know, the really crappy part is that, you know, if I ever do use a firearm in self-defense, if you ever do, you know, prepare for, you know, $100,000 or more in legal fees, prepare to get arrested, prepare to wash a couple years of your life down the drain trying to prove your innocence. That is what is required because we have no stand your ground law. You should be able to stand your ground, fight off a violent attacker, and go home to your family and rest in peace. You should not be arrested. You should not be prosecuted. You should not be sued. You should not have to bankrupt your family in order to prove your innocence. That should be taken for granted. That should be assumed, and that's what stand your ground law would do. So that's why it's just unacceptable that they won't give us a vote. They won't give us a vote. Let's see, guys. Joe Engel, if you're watching here, he says, where can I get the survey to have our candidates fill it out? It's right here in the comments section, pinned in the comments. It's also right on top of the video. You can click on it, print it out. You can just take the link, copy the link. If you know your rep's email address or your candidate, feel free to just send them the link. Say, here, I want you to print this off. I want you to fill it out. Do that. You can do that as well. So let me know if there's anything else you have questions about on that, guys. So I'm gonna hop off for right now. I wanted to draw attention to people like Nick Zerwas, who tries to pretend that he's pro-gun, but his long history proves that he is anything but. And so I would just encourage you guys. You know, there's a little rule. You know, it's not hard to remember. I do this all the time when I go to St. Paul and have to talk to some of these anti-gun thugs. You ask yourself this question. You know, when you're talking to a politician, how does it benefit the politician if I do what they want me to do or believe what they want me to believe? Ask yourself that question every time. Every single time, and you'll quickly find out that whenever you're talking to a politician, they're always trying to spin things for their benefit. So keep in mind, how does it benefit them if I do what they want me to do or believe what they want me to believe? That is the question. Joseph, you have some questions about this concealed carry ruling. I'm gonna do another video on that probably tomorrow, very shortly, to give our full thoughts about it. I gotta hop off for right now. But I will come back and we will address this. This deserves a video of its own. We're already 37 minutes in. Oh my gosh. Thank you guys for joining me tonight. I'm going to hop off for right now. Make sure your candidates filled out the survey. Don't take their guff. Don't take their spins. Don't take their lies. Don't take the crap they try to foist on gun owners. They're not doing their jobs for gun owners. They're not doing it. And it's time that they step up to the plate and fulfill their obligation to gun owners. It's time for stand your ground, or at least, for heaven's sakes, an adequate defense from the anti-gunners who are attacking our gun rights full time. At least do that much. That's bare minimum. But they wouldn't even do that in 2017 or the 2018 session. They wouldn't fight to stop gun control. You guys did it. We did it. We got it done. You guys got it done. Thank you so much for your help. I'm going to hop off right now. Have a good night. Love you guys, and I'll see you back here tomorrow. Take care.